Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Up the Downstair by the band Porcupine Tree.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So before this video starts, I of course want to say to you all that I apologize very much for not releasing this video in the day in which it was supposed to be released, which was yesterday. Sorry about that, I'm really busy at the time, so that's why we're getting a double episode today. But on another note, I want to tell you all a very sad short story. So you know, when I started this channel, I didn't think far. I didn't think I was gonna finish this. I haven't finished it yet, but I didn't think I was gonna finish this journey, and I didn't really, expect much acclaim or acknowledgement by many people. But if there's one thing that I always kind of thought would be funny is if at one point I reached 365 subscribers. And you know what, just 2 days ago I knew that this moment was coming. I had 364 subscribers and I was just refreshing my page all day long waiting to get to that aforementioned number. But then night rolled around and I had to go to sleep, so unfortunately I didn't see it happen quite yet, but I was ready to see the numbers change tomorrow morning. So I went to sleep, I woke up in the morning, I opened up my channel page, and lo and behold, I had 366 subscribers. I don't want to complain about gaining subscribers, it's not a good thing to do, but I can't believe I've missed it. I missed the 365 subscriber mark. And the worst thing is, it just keeps going up from there. I think like right now we're at 369 and it's not going back. You know, I guess it's sort of poetic. It's sort of this Murphy law that just had to happen. So what can I do? It's only symbolic, I guess. Anyway, here's some of my favorite bits from today's album. So far on the list, I've reviewed 2 Steven Wilson or Steven Wilson related albums, those being of course Porcupine Tree's Deadwing and his own solo album called Hand Cannot Erase. And aside from today's album that we're reviewing, I still have 3 more Wilson related albums to go through on the series. Now, why am I even telling you this? Well, the simple truth is that so far, whatever I've heard from Steven Wilson kind of just made me like his music less and less. And I think to counteract this, negative approach that I had towards his music so far is by telling you all about what I actually do like about Steven Wilson's other types of albums and how does that relate to why I find most of his music distasteful. So for starters, let's talk about what's my personal favorite album from Steven Wilson or the related ones. Well, it's a very special album, it's a very unique album which I personally really love. I love how modern it is, as well as just paying homage to the past. It is really well constructed, and that album is of course No Man's Love You to Bits. Oh, you were expecting something else. Interesting. So yeah, jokes aside, Love You to Bits by No Man, which is of course the duo of Steven Wilson and Tim Bowness, is a great album which I personally really love. Now I know that it has a very bad rating over on the Prog archives, and I get why, because it isn't your contemporary prog at all, and it's very modern, it's very techno, and it's something different, okay? Let's say it like that. But personally, I really love that album. I love everything that has to do with its composition. I know that the B-side is lesser to the A-side, but still, it's a great album and definitely more solid than The Raven That Refused to Sing, but that's just personally my own opinion. Now the reason I'm bringing up this album is because I find some similarities between how it's constructed and how today's album Up the Downstair is constructed as well, and it all comes down to something that I might want to call progressive techno. So firstly, I believe that there's no introduction needed to be given about Porcupine Tree. You know who they are, they just came back into relevancy after a long hiatus in which they've now released their 2022 album, which is amazing for all of you that like their music. Personally, I'm not that excited, but it's nice to see something happening in the mainstream prog scene. And today's album was actually released way back in 1993. I'm leaning to the side like I'm doing the cover thing. I'm just gonna go back to the middle. Now today's album was definitely an interesting listen because on the one hand it did really much sound like a signature Porcupine Tree album, but on the other hand it sounded nothing like it. This album isn't your typical melancholic Wilson vocals driven album, but rather something much more ethereal and instrumental and even electronic to a certain point, which is much more akin to space rock, which is not what you'd usually find on most of Porcupine Tree's albums. And this album opens up quite finely with a 13-minute long track that could be divided down to 4 subsections, and this one has a very solid rhythm section and establishes a very interesting and unique atmosphere that makes you feel like you're floating out in space, and it's mostly repetitive and monotonous, but it's fine, I guess, and it's broken up into parts by different spoken word sections or just, odd sections in between, and it's a very interesting representation of progressive rock. And you know what, I kinda enjoyed this first track. Honestly, thinking about it now that it's in hindsight, it was really a nice track and it totally came in the right mood for me. But then the next track, well, it kind of just did the same thing, and wouldn't you know it, so did the other 2 tracks on this album. And by this point I feel like I'm on a really bad streak. This is the 3rd album, which my main criticism towards would be it's a good album, but unfortunately it just keeps on doing the same thing and just being monotonous and repetitive, and it takes something that is enjoyable in small doses and creates a full-length album out of it, which is just unbearable. And while I did like the spoken word sections and like the snippets inside of the songs, they were really unique, I just don't think that it's enough to actually gratify this album with some redeeming features. It was overall very forgettable, although it was pleasant to hear, and that's unfortunate because it does feel like there's so much potential within this type of music. But if I had to sum it up, I'd say that this is some excellent background music, but you know what the problem with that is? Well, progressive rock really, in my personal ideology, shouldn't and honestly couldn't be background music. The entire point of progressive rock is to always keep the listener engaged, to change things up, to not do things in a way that is so highly expected that you really don't notice that you're listening to anything. And that's why whenever I hear an album like this and I realize that this is basically background music, I start doubting whether this is even prog at all. And I think that the best description that I would give to this album might be space rock, but honestly it's just kind of ethereal art rock. But anyways, I really don't have a lot to say about this album because it's really just stale. There's really not a lot to dissect in it. Maybe there is more backstory to it, but honestly I really don't care about the backstory. I care about what I'm listening to. So I will be clutching at my last few strands of hope and still maintain the other Steven Wilson and Porcupine Trees albums that are on the list in hopes that maybe they'll be better than what I've experienced by them so far. But yeah, that's about all. Let's move on to talking about the cover. So, did you ever wonder to yourself what would happen if we took the cover for Hand Cannot Erase by Steven Wilson and Hingis by Sven Grunberg and made a child out of them? Well, this would be the result. Yeah, in my personal opinion, Porcupine Tree have never been known to create such marvelous cover arts, but this is just kinda lazy in my opinion. You of course have this sort of supernova in space, and you have the text, and it's nice colors, and you have a face inside of the supernova, and honestly, I really don't care. It's a boring cover for a pretty boring album, so I guess at least it does something right, and that's to get a match between the art and the music. So honestly, all of the songs on here are definitely like a 7, but when it comes down to listening to this album from front to back, it is really monotonous and just really arduous, and I don't like that, so it's getting a rating of 6 out of 10. But that's about it guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Lady Lake by the band Grindlog. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wan and Rist of Kings and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it guys, have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.